Good morning and welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. Well, we're going to talk about shit it's the fan. We're going to talk about things that are getting us there. What is happening in the world, how we can think about it. We need to protect ourselves. We need to understand what is being done. Now, if you listen to all these videos and listen to yourself, you might conclude that the government is absolutely moronic, beyond repair, stupid, right? And anyone could make that case just by pointing to the decisions that are going on. But we as preppers need to remember, I think, that 50%, approximately 50% of the country thinks differently than us, meaning they're not patriotic, they're not freedom-minded, they're the opposite. They think that what they want, total government control, is patriotic. Absolutely crazy. So, where do we go? You know, what is going on? I see and I've got a couple of news stories here for you. You're going to love them. You're going to absolutely love them. Scratch your head and then wonder, right? We're seeing a little bit, and the reason I brought these stories up is to demonstrate the government knows what it's doing on a bunch of different levels. They know. But what this is doing is this is going to put more conflict in front of us. I would love to say that these Supreme Court decisions, these court decisions, are a restoration or a returning to normalcy. It's a return to intelligent thinking, or at least a start. And what I will say, and I'm going to submit, is a small swing back, 1% back, is not a return or restoration, but it does let us know that the government and the courts are responding, at least somewhat, to what's going on. At least with the culture, with the population, with an understanding that there's problems out here. But we also have to realize that these are political institutions, the courts. Yeah, they pretend like they're above politics and partisanship, but they're not. We have to realize that this is going to create more consternation, more conflict, more confusion. This is interesting news, but it's going to cause you and me more problems. So let's get into it. Story one, Supreme Court overrules a California judge, grants asylum restrictions at the southern border. So the Supreme Court, that's the Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, which sounds too close to scrotum to not make me giggle every time I think of that acronym. The scrotum handed the Trump administration a big win this week after two injunctions against asylum restrictions were struck down. The ruling means that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection can immediately begin denying immigrants asylum at the border if they haven't first applied for safe haven in a third country, while the greater legal battle over the issue plays out in the lower courts. Now, the dissenting votes, they came from, our favorites, Sonia Sotomayor, communist appointed by Obama. And the other, of course, would be our favorite, RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, proponent and author. She authored the paper saying 12-year-old girls ought to be able to choose when and with who they want to have sex. Yeah, brain dead. Anyways, this is good. This is really good, right? Steve Vladeck tweets out, this grants stay of both July 24th and September 9th injunctions against Trump administration rule barring asylum from those who didn't first apply in a third country, and allows controversial policy to go into effect on a nationwide basis pending the government's appeal. Interesting, huh? It's amazing to me, right, that they call it controversial. Well, if the court ruled in favor of the Trump administration, that means the minority view is the controversial one. The people saying, no, we should just allow them in, is controversial. The belief that the government or the president, as the chief executive, has no right to do his job. That's controversial. But for us down here on the street, this is going to put more conflict into play as preppers, as American citizens, as people who believe in the Constitution, the rule of law, and have the belief that they have a right to defend their country, themselves, from enemies, foreign and domestic. Right? In other words, we're going to have more left-right confrontation over this. This is not going to go away. We have, at the societal level, a breakdown in thinking. Or we have, at the societal level, a breakdown in the belief that we, the people, have a right to have our rights even. This is not about immigration as much as the concept of rights and rule of law. And the people on the left want to rewrite things as needed for them and their purposes as time progresses. They will come in conflict with themselves constantly. And we've seen this through the years, have we not? Bill Clinton sexually abuses women, pays settlements out, right? They attack the women who attack him and call them trailer trash, and that's what happens when you drag a $20 bill down the street, right? These women come out, and Hillary stood by her man. But years later, a few short years later, right, they are all pro-women and all men are wrong all the time, believe her, hashtag, all that shit. So they can change positions depending on what they need to get done as socialists. So here we are, right? When it works in their favor, they love the Constitution. When it doesn't, they oppose it. This is really stunning stuff. It's good stuff to see happening because it shows, yeah, there's a little bit of intelligence out here. At the same time, right, it's really not, and it can be reversed anytime. If President Trump loses next year's election, you can bet that there will be turnstiles at the southern border to count votes as it click, 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 lets them in, and they hand them credit cards with statements that get sent to your mailbox. Now, turning to the next story at townhall.com, story by one of the most intelligent people I've ever listened to. I've heard him. He used to substitute for Rush Limbaugh in the 90s, and after that I quit listening to him, Rush that is, but Walter E. Williams, a brilliant mind, one of the most brilliant and entertaining minds I've ever heard. In fact, the way he brings humor into everything when he used to speak, and maybe he still does do some radio, but just brilliant, funny, poignant. Walter E. Williams, black by popular demand. He used to bring that up as part of his shtick, right? And funny guy. Anyways, brilliant. I believe at the time he was teaching at George Washington, professor. Anyways, he writes, academic stupidity and brainwashing. Why is this important? Once again, the thought that's being developed in through the grade schools and the college system is putting those students, those brainwashed students, as adults out here in the general public, and they are coming in conflict with us. I am, the more I interact with the youth, the more I discover they are woefully inept, incapable of logic and reason. They have a harder time with it, not because they're stupid, but because they've been denied the thought processes that get them where they need to be. So, right out the bat, Mr. Williams writes, just when we thought colleges could not spout lunar ideas, we have a new one from American University. They hired a professor to teach other professors to grade students on their labor rather than their writing ability. Right? The professor at American University hired to teach that nonsense is Aseo B. Inui, and forgive my pronunciation, who is a professor at the University of Washington in Tacoma on interdisciplinary arts and sciences. He is also the director of the university's writing center, and Inui believes that a person's writing ability should not be assessed in order to promote anti-racist objectives. See, everything that they want to turn around, they can argue against and then slap the label racist on top of it. Once again, this is written by Walter E. Williams, Black by Popular Demand, right? It's incredible. And then he writes, there's another very dangerous bit of academic nonsense happening, this time at the K through 12, that's kindergarten through 12, level education. One America News Network anchor interviewed by Mary Claire Amsalem, education specialist at the Heritage Foundation, about the California Department of Education's proposed ethnic studies curriculum. The proposed ethnic studies curriculum would teach children that capitalism and father figures are racist. Capitalism is racist. I thought capitalism was an economic model, not an economic social model or a social cultural model or a racist imperialist model. I thought it was just an economic model. Now it's being taught that it is racist. On top of that, it teaches that fathers are racist. And once again, my experience with people on the street is becoming more and more jaded by these teachings. As I run into kids, they are extremes. They're either Mr. John, right? And they're very polite and respectful and they look up to me more than just because I'm tall. Or I get the squinted eye, or I get treated very poorly, and it's starting to really be visible as these socialists get more into power, as these young kids grow up and they start implementing their ideas into their everyday professional lives. They're becoming more disrespectful, openly, for no apparent reason. Even people who are in the public and retail, they should be polite and greet their customers. They greet some customers, yes, and other customers like me, no. Why? Because I'm white, because I'm male, right? Because they have these perceptions that white men are racist, and they're now taking this out into the public. And there's no shit, it's the fan going on. There's no riots. There's no economic chaos, right? There's nothing going on like that. Yes, the economy is slowing down, but these are people with jobs. Yes, times are tough, but they're tough for everyone. Still, right, I am seeing, and I know it's just anecdotal information or anecdotal inferences or anecdotal situations I'm seeing, but to me, they're very real because they're my world, and I'm seeing it more and more. It is increasing. It is not coming and going, ebbing and flowing. It's increasing. This level of disrespect for capitalism, this level of disrespect for traditions and our culture, this level of disrespect for the law. And I see it in some places that are very hurtful, right? Very hurtful, very personal. It's crazy. And I want to get on to this last bit because this is also personal to me. The government orders Google to let employees express unpopular political views. That's right. The government has ruled against Google for punishing their employees for expressing their personal beliefs. Now, once again, is the country turning around? No. Can this ruling be overruled? I'm sure it can. Will it? I don't know. But Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, social media is under big fire right now for turning what should be open, level playing fields in social media and entertainment into biased, anti-constitutional, anti-freedom, anti-white, anti-constitution, anti-free market over to everything that's the opposite. They have become fascist institutions or corporatist institutions interested in their own policies and using their massive monopolistic powers to punish people, including their own employees. So, in what appears to be a huge victory for Google employees who don't ascribe to the ultra-liberal Silicon Valley monoculture, the National Labor Relations Board, That's the government that we're referring to when we say the government makes an order. The National Labor Relations Board has reached a settlement with Google over complaints that Google punishes employees for speaking out on political and workplace issues that don't comport with the company's agenda. It is really fascinating, right? Now, I do want to remind everyone, this is Donald Trump. President Donald J. Trump came out after learning what Google is up to. And he writes, Sundar Pichai, who is the CEO, I believe, of Google, was in the Oval Office working hard, very hard to explain how much he liked me, what a great job the administration is doing, that Google was not involved with China's military, that they didn't help crooked Hillary over me in the 2016 election, and that they are not planning to illegally subvert the 2020 election, despite all that has been said to the contrary. This is, again, the President of the United States. He goes on to say, it all sounded good until I watched Kevin Cernicki, a Google engineer, say terrible things about what they did in the 2016 and that they want to, quote, make sure that Trump loses. Right? We have some incredible developments going on. This is, even though, yeah, it's the government looking at this and saying, okay, we're going to stop this, we're going to reverse this, we see it now. This is going to result in more political and social, cultural conflict. The other complaint is a current Google employee who claims he was punished for sharing, quote, unflattering opinions, end quote, about a Google executive on Facebook. Once again, your ability to speak your own thoughts comes out. And it's used against you professionally to punish you or fire you. Now, just so you know, I sent this article to my former human resources manager to let him know you're going to get in trouble for doing what you did to me. It's not a threat. I'm not threatening them. I want to see what the response is. This is getting turned around and it's going to be thrown in their faces. They're going to be subject to lawsuits. You should be allowed to express your opinion, even if you talk about someone directly, an unflattering opinion about co-workers or anyone for that matter. And that you should be allowed on Facebook, at work, to discuss your political opinion. And just because it's unpopular doesn't mean you should be punished for it. Doesn't mean you can be fired for it. This is good because it's making people realize the system that's being forced down our throats. It is wrong and we know it. And it's going to tell the left you can't do it anymore, not without a fight. It's also going to promote people on the right to open their mouths, which is something that I always say. Don't be a coward. Don't lay down. Stop giving in. Don't be a pussy. Be yourself. It doesn't mean be impolite. And it doesn't mean say things in poor taste. It doesn't mean that you can run around your work screaming communist at everyone who doesn't agree with you, even though at work, communists scream at everyone that they're fascist and racist if they don't agree with them. It doesn't mean do all that, but what it's going to do is more conflict, head-to-head confrontation, pressure, as things get worse in other areas like the economy. As we get into this political season, the politicized nature of the elections no longer rests on the debate stage. It comes off the debate stage and into our lives, at home, at work, while shopping, right? At social functions and gatherings that are either professional or personal. This conflict is going to increase, right? The partisanship pressure is increasing. And again, we have to understand that on the right, we like to think, we like to argue, we like to debate, we like to put ideas out there and then say, let's talk about it. The left, on the other hand, says, listen to us, we're right, and if you don't do what we say, we're going to punish you at work, punish you socially, and in a lot of cases, especially with the younger folks who have been indoctrinated, brainwashed, right? And I mentioned them at the beginning of this video. College students are becoming more violent. They violently oppose everything. They violently oppose because they've been brought up and taught for years. Years, literally. Up to 2 decades, depending on how much secondary education they get in college, of brainwashing that if you are white and male, you're a capitalist, racist thug. I mean, that's the formative educational years, K through 12, and then add on to that secondary education, where they're taught to believe that they're more educated, more intelligent than everyone else because they've sat in a classroom an additional 4 years and had someone fucking lecture in their ear. Yaka, 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 yaka. Bad, racist, white, capitalist, pigs, fascists, and they're yelling it in their ear, right? The thing about thinking is you're supposed to be given information about 2 or more perspectives, and then allowed to use your thinking process, looking at history, looking at information, right? Comparing successful to unsuccessful models, applying a moral standard that isn't biased, right? It's great. Let's go with the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie. Hello? You look at what the left does when they're in power. They lie to their people and trick them. They kill everyone. They steal their shit. Hello, moral basis. They're being taught in school that communism is good and that socialism is just fine without referring to the moral consequences of those powers being in, which results in the murder, death, theft, and destruction of economies and peoples and cultures and religions. So this idea that the government can order Google to let employees express themselves is good. And it should stop companies, all companies, it should stop them from punishing people for expressing an opinion that could make the company look bad. And I know that this is just a National Labor Relations Board, but this can go to a court, which can go to the Supreme Court pretty quick. And it can be ruled on. You cannot punish people for doing what they did. Right? And also, Google and its subsidiary company, YouTube, are going to be subject to lawsuits if this continues this way. Because they have hurt businesses. They have hurt individuals with this easily demonstrated bias. The same bias that is now being made aware to Congress, to the President of the United States, to the Supreme Court. They're seeing these biases. And like I said, they know, they understand, they're not stupid. Right? Is the political wind changing? If it isn't, you need to be prepared. If the wind is changing, you need to be more prepared because of the conflict. I still see a partisan war in front of us. I still see shit hitting the fan light to medium in front of us, depending on how bad this gets. And trust me, please, understand that when a human being is 25 years old, from the time they were 4 to the time they were 24, being indoctrinated, 23 out of the 25 years of their life, they are not going to be able to function in a culture and world ruled by logic and reason. They're going to come out and go, oh, you mean everything I've been taught for the last 20 years is bullshit? It's wrong? They're going to have within them a developed inability to think rationally. Now, I'm not saying every single student. I'm saying the ones who had bought the indoctrination. And I have to tell you, back when I was in school, the indoctrination was there. It was there. And I and others used to argue with the teacher when they started spouting affirmative action bullshit. And once again, I can say, Mr. Parker, right? You say you're willing to give up your job because someone of color has applied for it, and you should not get the job, and he should based on color. And he would say, yes, that's correct, John. And I would say, well, what are you going to do for work? Why don't you matter? And he'd say, well, for work, I'll get a job somewhere else. I said, well, if you're the number one pick for the job, you should get it. Why can't that other person go get that other job that you just claimed you were going to get? This is coming from a kid who is, 16 or 17 in high school. I could easily back then argue against them. So I know today that kids can and do argue against this indoctrination. It's also my belief that a much higher percentage don't argue. And that's why we're seeing such a big socialist leftist movement out of the millennial generation. Fortunately, they don't get 3 votes to my 1. And I think they get 4. Anyways, the government is ordering Google. This is going to have consequences. The consequences, I believe, are going to be more conflict. So get prepared. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Understand that the good news still is shit it's the fan news. We're not out of the woods until after shit it's the fan, no matter what happens. Because no matter what these courts start to rule, or what the bureaucracy determines, or what Congress says about breaking up Google, YouTube, breaking up these massive corporations that want to control our lives and dictate to us and control the outcome of elections, which is illegal. It's illegal for them to do what they're doing. Same with the mainstream media. What they are doing is illegal, as far as I'm concerned. But that's just me, right? None of this stuff will matter until shit has hit the fan and we've moved through it and we reestablish some form of governance. Hopefully it's a constitutional republic, rebirthed with a new currency, rebirthed with an attitude of free speech and real free markets. Oh yeah, the markets need to be freed again. We actually don't have free market capitalism. We have crony capitalism. But that's for another video. That's for another shit it's the fan topic. For now, chance favors the prepared mind is yours. You guys be cool. Semper Fi. Godspeed to all.